What can Sir Cherry do today? Well, I'll tell you what I'm going to talk about. I'm actually going to talk about my journey with discovering how I got brain cancer. So bear with me. This is going to be a kind of more off the cuff video log, just talking about how I discovered everything in the first place. So no script, no nothing, just going for it. So I'm here to put it out there for anyone that's interested in why I'm starting this journey and everything. So this all started back right late December of 2023. I was driving home, I was driving to my mother's house, and I felt my left arm go completely numb, lost all feeling. First, I thought I was maybe gonna have a heart attack. I told my girlfriend at the time, I guess now fiance, my arm's numb. I might have a heart attack. We were pretty close to the house. I wasn't too concerned. I could still move my right arm and everything. And I was like, but I think I can make it to the house. And, we made it. Luckily, I didn't have a heart attack. And, but I still noticed that weird, numbing feeling the entire rest of the night. Kind of went away. I was thinking maybe I pinched a nerve. Woke up the next morning. It was still kind of there, but not too bad. And then, those feelings of that numbness, which I now know is called neuropathy, which is lack of feeling, kind of just continued on for the next few weeks or so, but I didn't think too much of it. As I looked into it, as I shouldn't self-diagnose on Mayo Clinic. A lot of people do that. I learned that pinched nerves can cause symptoms of neuropathy, so I was like, that's probably what it is. And so then I went on, my winter break from college and was experiencing things here and there, but then I started noticing something a little different, which was I started randomly drooling out of the left corner of my mouth. And I would be sitting here and a big thing of drool would just come out. And that was weird. And my corners should not be that loose. I play trumpet. So, my corners are usually pretty firm. So that was definitely an interesting thing for me to discover. And I was playing trumpet and I realized it just felt looser when I would play. So I'd let air out. So that was a little weird too. And I was just kind of confused by that. But again, I didn't really think too much of it. So then, the weeks passed by and then I start school again in January. And next thing I noticed, it was literally the first day of classes. I remember because I was in my music history class and I had the worst splitting headache of my entire life. It literally floored me. I've never had a headache floor me so bad that I left and went home, took a pain med and went to bed the rest of the day. I could not deal with the pain that bad. I've never had something like that happen. And it surprised the hell out of me, but I woke up, the pain was gone, okay. And then about a week later, the following Wednesday, I could feel that same similar headache feeling happening. And I was about to go into my trumpet lesson for the week, but I didn't want to say, I can't go into my lesson because I have a headache. I practiced the material and I wanted to make sure I showed him I prepared. So I asked him about an hour before my lesson, I can feel a headache coming on. Do you have a pain med I could take? So by the time my lesson starts, I can, be ready. And he's like, yeah, sure. So I took one and then I came back and played my lesson. Everything went fine. And I didn't end up getting a headache that time because I felt it coming. So that was the last time I really noticed anything before the major stuff and the major discoveries happened. So then it was January, it was January 20th. I was working at my local, I guess now everyone's gonna know where I work, but whatever, at my local Panda here. And I was, serving food as you do. And, they have the bowls or the plates. They're not heavy or anything. They're light. And I'd grab them and I couldn't grab them. I would just drop it. I was like, that's not right. So I was like, okay. I went to the little manager station to the side. And, if you're holding your phone and texting, I would watch my right thumb go down and then my left thumb would not go down. I'm looking at him you are not doing what I want. I was shut it down. Come on, man. Get down there. I'm why are you typing? It was weird. I could not get it to respond. So then I started kind of freaking out a little bit. This is a little weird, man. So then I just go to the back room and sit down on the floor and try to process what's going on. And then as I'm sitting down, obviously I'm doing it now voluntarily, but I sit down and I look at my hand and it just goes like this, seizing in front of me. And I'm I'm not doing that. My hand's twitching and I grab it, slam it down. And I'm do not do that. I'm in control of my arm. You do not do that. And it happened for about a minute straight and I'm just watching it, sitting there. I'm oh my goodness, this is weird. And luckily, my girlfriend was already on the way because I was going to take my meal break with her and eat. So she got in there, said, hey, come here. And she got in the door and she's like, what's wrong? Is everything okay? I'm like, no, I need to go to the hospital. I just, like, my arm just, like, seized on its own. I couldn't control it for about a minute. She's like, okay, we go. Told my boss, left, clocked out. Just had to go. So I got in there. They saw me pretty instantly. And then in there again, I had the seizure happen with my arm again. And then I started throwing up profusely. And then that's when they were like, oh, shit, something's wrong. So then they put me immediately on anti-seizure medication, anti-nausea medication, like everything instantly. And then they threw me in like 4 different scans. I had a CT scan, a dye scan, an MRI, a CAT scan, everything to test absolutely everything possible. And then, you know, after I passed out because I'd been working all day. And it was like 10:30 or 11 at night at that point, I think, by the time I got to the hospital anyway. So I was pretty exhausted. So I passed out for most of the scans. I fell asleep. And then I woke up again in the like a hospital bed. And they brought back a picture of the scans and everything. And that's when they discovered I have brain cancer. And they showed me the tumor that was about the size of a golf ball. And they said the tumor has hemorrhaged. So I had a brain bleed, and that's why I had the seizures. And I was like, okay. And they told me, had you probably ignored this any longer and pushed it off as something else, you could have had even more major hemorrhage happen in the middle of the night and probably died then. So I'm glad that I went to the hospital. And then they're like, neurosurgery will be with you in the morning. And I said, oh, cool, that's great. I wake up in the morning, the neurosurgeon comes in, he's like, we're referring you to someone else. And I went, referring? That's not good, right? That means you can't do it. That means it's not good. So I got referred to a different hospital that with a much better surgeon, I guess, or someone who felt more confident in their surgical ability. And I ended up, meeting with him a couple of days later. He was like, man, and when I met with him, he's like, I looked at your scans and they told me you were just following up. And he's like, he should not be following up, man. He's like, he's walking around. How? Looking at his brain, you're telling me he's up and walking? That's impossible. So he was very impressed that I was able to be as composed as I was at the time. So that was something, I guess. But yeah. And that's when he told me his potential diagnosis without obviously doing surgical procedure. And based on everything, he talked with the tumor board, other radiologists and experts that all discuss different types of tumors, see all tumors all the time. And he told me he believes it is grade 2 glioblastoma. After all this stuff, we learned that that is right. We don't know the grade as of this current moment. They're still doing tissue analysis, but I will get to that later. But so far, it was a glioblastoma. He was right, and it's great to know that he was right now. It is a very rare form of brain cancer, and they believe that I was born with it my entire life, and that there's normally caused by genetic DNA malfunction, and it kind of functions like a birthmark. So you have like a birthmark on your skin. It grows over time. Some of them do. It's like that, but just inside my head, and has grown over time until something changed in it, hemorrhaged, like I said, and then I became symptomatic. So, obviously then he pushed for my surgery to be, get everything moving along as fast as possible. He's like, this is a serious issue and we want to take care of this. And he discovered that there's the main mass, but then there was an area above it that he was hoping was swelling. It turned out to be tumor, like he thought. So it had spread into my sensory and motor cortex in my brain. And he's like, there's a chance we do this operation, I could make no technical error whatsoever, and it could paralyze you. And that was a scary thought to deal with for a couple weeks before I got surgery. So that thought was looming over my head, but I had a great support system, family, friends, everybody. And it really kind of brought it into perspective for me, like to cherish every moment that I have, because who knows if I'll wake up tomorrow. And I have, and I'm very fortunate and lucky for that. So yeah, obviously he pushed for my surgery. I got a functional MRI done on February 7th, 2 days before the surgery, which is a 3D map of my brain. It tests all your critical structures, knows where all your motor cortex functions are, like sensories, language, speech, pathology, everything down to like the micrometer. And so when he's going through my brain, he can maneuver through your brain looks like spaghetti. Those are called gyri. So he maneuvers through the gyri to get deep into my head where the tumor actually is, the main part that he could get. And he said the goal is that we go for maximum tumor debulking for minimal neurological deficit. he said, statistically speaking, for anything to be quote unquote effective or considered effective, depends on how you think about it. Both ways have been proven true, either a linear path or a more curvilinear path. But he thinks for it to have any real sort of noticeable change, it would be 70 to 80%. He's like, I'll be lucky if I get 50 because of how the rest of the tumor has spread. I said, well, you know what? I'd rather live a lot less time and be not paralyzed than be paralyzed and live a lot longer. So that's the ultimate conclusion we came to. He's like, I think that's also a great idea. I'm like, I'm glad we can agree on this. So obviously surgery comes around, and I go in about like 5:30 in the morning, and I get in the room, they do a bunch of pre-testing, get a little gown on. Apparently they were heated too. I was like, oh, that's so fancy. And then they come in, they're like, you are getting this surgery. Are you consenting to this? Yes, please get the tumor out of my head. I would love that. And they take a little pen, they write yes on my forehead to confirm. And I'm like, cool. And then, I say my final moments to my parents who were sitting there in that room with me. And I told them, after all this time and seeing how much support I've gotten through all of this, I'm glad to know, like, even if I were to meet the unfortunate end in this operating room this morning, I lived a fulfilling life. I've at least impacted somebody to some degree, and that's enough for me. And I thanked them for the time that I got to be their son. And, a little bit of a tearjerker kind of moment for all of us, but I knew I was going to be okay. I had a really good feeling, and obviously that was the case. So, nurse is wheeling me back, and she looks at me as I enter the operating room. She's like looking over the bed, and she's like, man, you got the A team today. And I'm like, really? She's like, yeah, you're the first surgery today. I'm like, let's go. They're all fresh. They're not going to be like, oh, and then like get the wrong cut. And I was like, oh, thank God. Whew. And then it was kind of like a weird movie scene because I'm like sitting there on the bed, or I guess laying, and like there's like 10 different people in the room, and they all come in and like shake my hand, individually introduce themselves to me, and like talk about their position and what they're doing. And it was really cool. And then obviously the last one to shake my hand and talk to me was the main neurosurgeon. And then they're like, all right, we're going to move you to the operating table. And I'm like, cool. And they set me from the main bed to the operating table. And then, they all go around the room. It's like watching the Avengers assemble or something. And they're like, do we confirm that you are here and you are ready to perform your duty in this surgery? And like, I. And they're like, let's begin. I'm like, okay. And then the guy next to me's like, I'm going to administer the anesthesia now. I'm like, all right, let's get it over with. Flash. I'm instantly out. I don't even remember. And then I open my eyes, and I'm looking across, and I see someone laying in a bed. And I'm like, all right, it's not the pearly gates. It's not the fiery depths. That looks like a hospital. I think I'm alive. That's great. And then next thing you know, I'm like, wait, am I paralyzed? Let's find out. I'm like laying, I'm looking at my hands, and I do oh my God, I'm like, I can move my hands, move my legs, move my feet, shake the shoulders, shrug the face. I'm like, oh, great, we did it. And then I realized I wasn't paralyzed, so I was like, go, let's go. So it was fantastic. I was very elated to be alive and not paralyzed. And then Dr. Sapp, anyway, name drop, my fault. He came in, and about an hour, I think, after I'd woken up, and shook my hand, and he said to me, he's like, you are so strong, man. I don't know how you're pulling this off right now. You should not be this functional after the craniotomy you just went under. And he's like, you're impressing the hell out of all of us doctors. Like, we really don't know what's going on. I'm like, really? I'm like, bro, I just fell asleep and woke up. And he's like, no. And he's like, man, I'm honored to be a part of your surgery, and shook my hand. I'm like, you're honored? I'm like, dude, you saved my life. What do you mean? So I was like, very, I was like, did he just thank me for giving me surgery? That was interesting. Cool. So again, that was a very interesting interaction with him, but he's a very, very amazing and talented surgeon. So I can't thank him enough for saving my life. But anyway, they then transferred me from the PACU to the ICU for overnight, where they constantly monitored me. And then, they're like, overnight, they're like, okay, you're good enough to move to the next hospital room. And I was originally told that my stay in the ICU was supposed to be about at least 4 to 7 days. And then they would transfer me to a regular hospital room for about the same time, another 4 to 7 days. So maximum I was supposed to be in the hospital was around 2 weeks based on average No, they moved me to the ICU immediately, but then after the ICU, I was only in there for 24 hours, and they moved me to a regular hospital room. From the time I had surgery till they discharged me from the hospital was 56 hours. And I'm like, I'm okay to go? And they're like, yeah, you're totally fine. You're progressing so well. Occupational and physical therapy has approved it. Neurosurgery's approved it. Your scans all look good. Like, your incision looks good. Nurses are approving it. I'm like, I can leave? And they're like, yeah. I'm like, well, we're all hearing the same thing, right? I can leave? And they're like, yeah. I'm like, okay. So then I got to go home a lot earlier than I expected. And I've been doing some research. And I think when I was looking at it, in a similar tumor situations and surgeries, the earliest person I could find out before myself had been in the ICU and hospital, or I guess the overall hospital situation, for 5 days. So the earliest person was 5 days before myself that I could find personally. I could be mistaken, but that's some brief research that I did. And I'm like, do I hold a record or something? Like that would be insane, but you never know. I'm sure there's similar cases out there as well, but I guess the real thing about it all is I feel like a walking miracle in a way. And I never expected to recover as well as I'm doing. And obviously I've had my moments since I've been home. It's not been perfect by any means, but I feel like I'm progressing very well. And that's a good thing because I would want to be progressing well. And that's when I had the idea for Cancer Cherry as my name in the hospital. I was like, if I'm going to be home for 3 months or more, like, just bedridden, I'm like, I'd rather do something with my time. I'm going to play video games anyway. I might as well see if I can, make something of myself out there and post videos, make content, something I've always thought about doing. And I got nothing but time now, so I might as well do that. And now I'm here on my journey with you guys. And I'm excited to start that journey and get on this path and get started. I've thought about doing it forever, man. It's something really cool. So I'm just really excited. And I hope y'all enjoyed my little story about all this. Obviously, I have my website. People can message me on social media. Thank you all for tuning into this video, and I'm sure there will be more to come. And yeah, so it's Cancer Cherry, Noah, signing off.